Welcome to Make Your Mark Live. My name is Mark Moyer, and I am hosting this on behalf of the Win Again Academy. Super duper excited to have Justin Brown with me. And Justin is, I just had this amazing assessment with him. He's really got his act together. Just so impressed with him from just not being an elite athlete and an NFLer, but also transitioning and helping other athletes transition. Super guy, say hello, Justin.
How you doing, Mark? Thanks for having me.
You betcha. And right off the bat, where are you located right now?
So currently right now I'm located in Newark, Delaware. Yep. So same state where I'm originally from, but different town.
Got it. And I guess people from New Jersey are always wondering why it's Newark there and Newark up there. And do we have an explanation of that or not really?
I don't have an official explanation. It's just the way that I was grown to say that or pronounce the words.
No, and you're probably right, and I'll say that Jersey people are probably wrong, but that's a whole other story. So before we jump into, again, what I really want to talk about, which is, discovering your identity as an athlete post-career and how to transition and really how to use a couple of assessment tools, especially the DISC assessment, to really understand really how to take advantage of your skill set, your capabilities, and your personality and your traits to leverage that into a great career. But before we do that, just a little background about yourself, Justin. You said you grew up in Delaware, and from what I understand, you played a whole lot of sports when you were growing up. How did you land with football versus baseball versus hoops, et cetera?
Yeah, so real quick background about myself. Born in Cheltenham, Pennsylvania, relocated to Wilmington, Delaware. Like you said, grew up playing a lot of sports, football, basketball, baseball. Even ran a semester worth of track at one point in high school. But, as I continued to develop over those years, it was really just understanding that, football was probably one of those areas where I was getting a lot more attention, especially going into my early years in high school, being more nationally recruited. So baseball was my first love. But, I wasn't necessarily getting the scholarships like I was getting in football. And then I found out that, some baseball scholarships weren't full. So football kind of just was the pathway to go from there.
And so obviously you did okay in high school. Look, anytime you can get a scholarship to Penn State, that's pretty damn good. Anytime that you can be ranked in the top 30 of anything, much less nationally as a wide receiver, that's pretty cool. I bet you were pretty excited. Just out of curiosity, how did you find out about that? Like one day, someone called you and said, hey, you're in the ESPN top 30 nationally, or did you see it in the magazine, or how'd that find out?
Yeah, it was something that was like overnight, right? I would say probably going into middle of my junior year, going into my senior year. That's when a lot of the rankings started coming out, and that's when I got like a 4-star ranking. And then I saw that in ESPN 150, I was the top 30 wide receiver in the country. So, at that point in time, it was exciting, but then at the same time, it was a lot of responsibility because now everybody in the town is, trying to find you out and go compete against you to kind of measure where they were. So it was good. It kind of kept me grounded and kept me hungry to make sure that I could still live up to those expectations.
And look, that's a great answer, because on one hand, it had to be reassuring to know that, okay, you're now ranked nationally, therefore you're on people's radars, you're on the lots of schools' radars. But on the flip side, you're right. You have to defend it. You have to watch keep your eye on your six, as they say, on your back, and make sure that people aren't gaining on you as you're running forward. So that's cool. So you've got this ranking. You're about to graduate high school. You hear from. Did you get offers from a lot of schools? Just a couple? Just Penn State? How'd that go?
Oh, I felt like once after I got my first offer my sophomore year from Maryland, and then it was all the ACC schools started offering, and then once I got my first Big Ten offer, then all the Big Ten schools started offering. I got a first SEC offer was like South Carolina and then Tennessee, and then all the SEC schools started offering. So, it was like a trickle-down effect. Once one school pulled the trigger, then they all started to come in, and it was a blessing. I could only attribute it to honestly, to God and to just being fortunate enough and being blessed with the talents and, taking advantage of it.
So how did you, you had all these offers. How do you narrow it down? What made you say Penn State's the place?
So for me, it was just, I wasn't really necessarily on the name of the school. It was more so just the relationship.
Okay.
Just myself, I'm more so, it takes time, it takes time with me to kind of build that relationship. So the schools that were willing to wait for me and to make my decision and not rush me with, they have like 1,000 signing days today, right? So they're always rushing kids to sign early. But, when I was coming up, it was one signing day, right? First week in February, first Wednesday in February. And the schools that were telling me early, we'll wait until, that first week in February, or even if a couple of days after, those schools were the ones that kind of went up on my chart of school, so to speak, because then it showed the fact that they were really concerned about that relationship and really being patient with me and my process, instead of just trying to get me to pull the trigger and commit to add on to and being another one of the guys that just commit.
So you show up at Penn State, you start playing there. Obviously, it's a school with incredibly rich football tradition, and you do well there. You succeed there. You're nationally ranked, but not just as an athlete, but you're ranked as an academic. I mean, that's a big achievement. I know you know that, but it's not something where you show up to a few classes and you get ranked as a academic. I don't know if they call it all-star or whatever it is within the Big Ten, but I mean, look, you obviously understood the value of going to your classes. And we talked about this a bit. You suggest that you're a quiet guy who's an introvert a little bit and very focused on your studies. I bet you can be an extrovert if you need to be. Just saying, just a guess. But what led to you transferring to Oklahoma?
That's a great question. So actually, a lot of people don't know this, but except the people that were on my team. But after going to Penn State my first year, it didn't necessarily work out the way that I thought. There's certain things that as far as with the offense, of course the academics were phenomenal, the atmosphere phenomenal. But when it came to the football at that time, it's changed now, but the football part wasn't really matching up with what I was being told. So I had actually wanted to transfer after my freshman year, as well as with some of the other guys I came in with, but Joe, he didn't let me go. Even after my sophomore year, I came back and revisited the same situation. And he was just like, nah, Brown, give it another semester. Now I'm in my junior year, and I'm already kind of like, well, you know what? I'm already here. Feeling like I need to kind of just stick it out. And then, unfortunately, the university was hit with a scandal. A lot of lives have been affected, a lot of different things that came from it. It was an opportunity for me to be able to transfer, right? And not only transfer, but be able to transfer without sitting out a year. Not sure if you remember, but typically when you transfer, you have to sit out a year, right? So with these rules, they allowed the current players that were at Penn State to transfer and to be able to play right away. So one thing that I didn't do that I saw some of the teammates that I played with do, they transferred to some school in the same conference, right? And I wasn't going to do that. I actually got the blessing from my teammates, a lot of the people that I came in my recruiting class, just to let them know, hey, I'm thinking about transferring. Upon their blessing and letting me to kind of make that decision, that made me more comfortable with kind of exploring my options. And then, I look up and OU's calling, right? And Coach Norvell, I'll never forget, Coach Norvell gets on the phone, Coach Stoops gets on the phone, and they say, hey, we need you. We understand what you can do. We watched a lot of film on you. You can fit perfectly in our offense. They took the value of the fact that I could play inside and outside. And they pretty much told me, they said, if you come down here, being the fact that they had, unfortunately, they had some receivers kind of get suspended for some issues off the field. So they only had one returning starting receiver in Kenny Stills, who plays with the Texans right now. And they had 4 or 5-star incoming freshmen who were very talented. And then they had a few JUCO transfers, and they were like, well, we need somebody that has that leadership, that kind of has been playing, has a lot of reps, has a lot of experience. So here I am going from catching, 35 balls my junior year and maybe like 30 balls the year before that, to now somebody's telling me that they're going to guarantee me probably catching 2 times that number. So it was kind of hard to turn down. And at the same time, I still had aspirations to make it to the NFL. So it was a great opportunity. And so that's when I made that move, and I made that transferring move to which they were already 2 weeks into their training camp, actually. So when I transferred down there, they're already 2 weeks into training camp. And now I have to catch up. So I'm sleeping in the locker room for 2 weeks. I'm literally, waking up, football, eating football, breathing football, watching film until I go to sleep, because I realized that I was that far behind the curve. But fortunately, with the help of that coaching staff and the players supporting me, I was able to contribute a lot more than I even kind of thought I would. And it set me up for a good transition into the NFL.
Well, speaking of that transition, it's funny. I've obviously, as you know, I've met a lot of athletes, a lot of NFLers, and they all have different and unique stories about how they found out. Some of the guys were pretty darn sure they were going to make it. Others didn't think they had a chance, and then others were sort of pretty sure, but they were like didn't want to jinx it, kind of a thing. But did you have any idea going into the draft that it was a certainty? Did any of the teams say, "Oh, we're definitely going to draft you," or was it a complete surprise?
Yeah, so my situation, so coming out, my senior year, like I said, I had doubled my stats. In one season, I had about 900 and something yards, and that was way more yards than I had in all my years, 3 years combined at Penn State. Right. So a lot of the scouts were kind of intrigued with the fact that I was able to make that adjustment and still be very productive. There were still some question marks, and a lot of them wanted to see me at the combine. Right. The only problem was I wasn't one of the receivers that got invited to the combine. So now I'm going to someone that a lot of scouts had eyes on, to where I'm not even being at the combine nor Senior Bowl invite. So some agents backed off of me. And even I had an opportunity to play in a form of a Senior Bowl, like an East-West Shrine game type of deal. And so it gave me an opportunity to get in front of more scouts. I performed well there. I did well at my pro day. And, I actually, one of the schools, not one of the schools, but one of the organizations that was interested was the Steelers. So they were interested. They were the only organization to fly me in for a pre-draft visit. And, it was a great visit. And, sure enough, the team that actually takes me in the 6th round, 186 pick is the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, it was, like I said, it was something that I feel like was ordained by God, because here it is. I'm not even picked to the combine. I'm not even at a Senior Bowl. And then the only team that brings me in for the pre-draft visit, it ends up being the team that selects me on the third day of the draft. So it was,
well, you know why that happened, though. Come on, Justin. They said, "Hey, Jimmy, who'd we fly in anyway? Wait, who's this guy? Let's put him on the list." But they're like, "Well, we should take him in the 4th round." No, the 5th round. No. Then finally, there you are. But no, I'm kidding.
Yeah, that's a version. That's one version.
Yeah, that's one version. That's not the right version. Anyway, but look, congratulations on that. I'm sure that when when it happened, because obviously as the rounds start going by and you're kind of going like, wait a minute, what the hell? And but then you get the call. Now, it's not like you see on TV with the 1st round where everyone's sitting around in the living room waiting for the phone to ring. It's 6th round. It's like time is happening, and you'll always hear people say, oh yeah, I was like, taking the garbage out, or I was cutting the lawn, or I was doing whatever. What were you doing?
So I was actually in a studio apartment outside of Philadelphia, where I was kind of training during that time. And for those first 2 days, I didn't even want to watch the draft, because I was already just, going through it that entire week. Like, am I going to get drafted? Am I not? What am I going to do if I don't? Just me processing and overthinking everything, right? So I was actually at a studio with my girlfriend at the time, and we were just playing it cool. We on the 3rd day of the draft, we got away, went to go get a bite to eat. We came back to the studio, and then shortly after that, I get a phone call, and it was Dallas. Dallas had called me, and they were like, hey, we're thinking about taking you free agency. So I'm like, okay, cool. At least the team's interested, right?
Yeah.
And then about maybe a minute or so after that, Pittsburgh calls me, right? And they say, hey, well, have you been talking to Dallas? Have you been talking to Dallas? Are they thinking about taking? I'm like, hey, they just reached out to me to say, they were interested as far as free agent. And they said, and then there was like a pause, and then they were like, well, hold on, we're about to take you in the draft. We're about to take you in the 6th round. So shortly after that, I get on the phone. It's Mike Tomlin. Hey, Justin, man, we're about to take you, man. Congratulations, you're a Steeler. So now I'm just like, I'm going from just completely away from the draft, just, just stressing me out, to now, okay, at least I get an opportunity to probably be a undrafted free agent. And then to literally within a matter of seconds, I'm about to get drafted. And then I get on the phone with Kevin Colbert, the GM, the Rooneys. And it's just like, and then I turn the TV on, and it's like, wow, Justin Brown, Oklahoma 186. And I'm just like, wow, this is crazy, right? So a very, very fortunate moment. I was very blessed and thankful to even have that experience. But that night, I can remember that night just being excited, being with my close-knit family. I went to go to my parents' house, and just like a small close-knit family, just talking and celebrating with ourselves. It was definitely a night to remember for sure.
That's great, and it's so exciting because it's almost like I don't want to say the culmination of your whole life of effort, getting to the point where now you've finally made it. You finally got that call. You're in. But what's interesting is you're in, and now actually all the work starts all over again. Now you're in the big time, and now you got to really make it happen. So just a quick 2 minutes on this, because I don't want to. I want to get to some of the stuff we really want to talk about. But tell me a little bit about your experience with the NFL and playing with the Steelers, and then having a taste with the Bills, and then the injury and so forth. But just walk me through a little bit of that, if you could.
So real quick, from being drafted to a first-class organization in the Steelers, learning literally how to being in a situation to where a lot of the veterans were already kind of had that championship mindset. So I was fortunate just to be a part of that organization, just to understand how the organization is ran first class, right? Traditionally. Then I get, I'm exposed to Antonio Brown, Ben Roethlisberger, learning how to work, right? And my first year, I was actually on practice squad. So really now I'm really just working every single day, just trying to get better to really earn my keep, even as a practice squad player, because those type of rosters get shuffled every day.
Right.
Ended up earning and working the position into the rotation my second year into the starting lineup. Got into a situation towards the end of the year to where I was inactive, and after that, after being inactive, I was in. Le'Veon Bell got hurt, right? And so when Le'Veon Bell got hurt, they had to go and fill up another roster spot. So the person that's inactive on the back end of that roster, that 50 to 53 man, now you start to get shuffled. So then I was released, and then I was claimed to the Buffalo Bills. Now it's funny. I want to backtrack real quick because before going into my second season, I was training with Antonio Brown, and after probably one of the hardest workouts that I went through, that day we're at his house. His chef is preparing the meal for us. We're about to go attack another workout later on that day, and he just asked me a question. He was just like, "So JB, who are you?" Now I look at him, I'm like, "Okay, AD, I'm a football player, obviously, right?" So I say that, and then he looked at me and he said, "No, you're not. You're more than that." He was like, "Don't let this game do that to you." So again, now shortly after that, now I'm into that next season. I get released. I'm with the Bills. It's 2 weeks into training camp with the Bills. I break my foot, right? So I break my foot 2 weeks into the training camp with the Bills. I'm already removed from the game for now about a year. I'm training and rehabbing my foot at around the UNLV campus out in Nevada, in Las Vegas. And I'm doing one-on-one drills. My foot's just getting back to like 80%, 90%, right? Already a year in the game. I tear my quad, right? So now it's 2 season-ending injuries. So now I'm down 2 season-ending injuries. I build that up all the way for a year, get my quad as healthy as I can. Now my foot's already ready to go. I get an opportunity to play for the Toronto Argonauts. And my whole mission for that was to go up there, compete, get a lot of film so I could be able to get back into the NFL. Unfortunately, I go to the Toronto. 2 weeks in the training camp, I tear my psoas, right? And people are like, "What's your psoas?" And it's the ligament that connects, your groin to your abdomen, right? So I tear that 3 centimeters, and now I'm out. Now I'm out for the third season-ending injury in a row. I'm back on the couch now, back home, depression, anxiety, right? The whole bit. So now that conversation that I had with AB is in the back of my head, right? That "who are you" aspect. And now I'm realizing that I needed to understand that part of myself before I even got into this transition. And now I'm behind the ball because I thought I was going to have like everybody thinks, the 10+ career, and I'm able to worry about that transition afterwards, right after I make all the money and have everything lined up. Not so fast, right? So now I'm having to catch up. I go through the entire, anxiety.
Wait. Let me interrupt for 1 second because there's one thing I'm really curious about. Because your story is not uncommon. I mean, there's obviously tons and tons of athletes, especially in the NFL, who have suffered a career-ending injury well before they ever thought it would happen. You're 22, 23, 24, 25, and suddenly that's it. Is there anybody sort of either officially or unofficially in a position, whether it's with the NFL or an agent or someone with a team or anybody else, that's saying to you, "Listen, you may need a plan B. You may need to prepare in case you suffer some sort of an injury"? Or is everybody involved surrounding your life saying, football, focus on that. Don't worry about, other people get injured, not you. Don't worry about it. What was it like?
I think, and that's a good question. And I would say that, they expose you to it briefly, and then you understand that, you're really here to produce, right? It's not necessarily worrying about, what you do off the field or what you do, after your career. It's more so focused on, okay, for instance, when I came in as a rookie, I saw the representative of the NFLPA one time. They spoke about finances, the people that have around you, your team, certain things that you should do to help yourself in transition. But then after that first maybe 1 or 2 days, right, I never saw the guy again, right? And then even after, once you leave the league, whether it's agents or whether it's the NFLPA, they don't reach out to you and say, "Hey, now you are into our transition portal. Right now you need to have a mentor that's from the NFLPA that's going to walk you through these next, 6 months to a year." Right.
Wait,
so
you say they do or they don't reach out to you?
They don't. They don't.
So how does anybody find out about that, or do they?
I mean, you have to kind of continue to kind of call them up and try to ask if they have resources. but it's not something that they offer. Like, since you're a part of this shield, you come in on the shield. This is what's guaranteed whenever you do leave, right? It's more so of a, you have to do about a certain amount of years in, and you got to do this and you got to do that. And like you said, a lot of guys, the average years is about 3.5 years, right? So a lot of guys are transitioning out quicker than what the average normal, outside viewer would think.
So, so obviously that's something that needs to change. And I know that, we've talked about this before. I think my biggest surprise is that there's nobody that actually reaches out to the players to say, listen, here are our resources, click on this, good luck. Like, not even one phone call that's to say, hey, thanks for playing, thanks for being on the roster, thanks for participating, but you know what? It's good luck with that. See you later. It's really incredible to me. And I know that there's the players' trust and the PA and so forth, that they may mean well, and they may have, they do have a lot of resources, financial resources and otherwise. And I'm a little surprised that there's not a greater effort, because quite frankly, there's going to be some athletes that do take the initiative to figure out how to reach out and contact. And there's going to be others that don't, or they just assume, well, I guess if they're not reaching out to me, there must not be anything going on.
Right.
And that's unfortunate. So you've fast forward now to, you've had your injuries, and you're going through that little time as you said, on the couch, like you're depressed and you're not really sure what you're going to do next and how and so forth. What was the first glimmer? What was the first sign that, okay, here's how things are going to turn around for me?
Honestly, it was a conversation. I had walked into a local restaurant, and just trying to get a quick bite to eat, like a salad soup restaurant. And I ended up striking up a conversation with the gentleman who I later found out was the business owner of that restaurant and an additional restaurant in the town. And, we're just having a small talk conversation. He finds out I'm a local. He asked me if I play sports, and I was like, should I answer this question entirely, or kind of should I just give him the sideball answer and kind of keep it moving, right? Because I wasn't trying to lead that conversation to, where I was currently in that transition, right? So we ended up building a relationship off of that. And then I'm probably within that month, on our second interaction together, he just challenged me. He was like, Justin, I can tell you're going through a difficult moment, but all you have to do is really, redefine kind of who you are, right? Use those same principles that allowed you to get, to the highest level at your sport, and try to insert them, into whatever it is that you want to do in the second part of your life, right? The second quarter of your life. And he said, I guarantee you, once you do that and you apply those same principles, you'll probably have more success than you did, in being an athlete, right? So just, accepting that challenge, and then every day trying to, whether it was reading, going to events, having mentors and the different things that I wanted to get into, reaching out, just really just trying to catch up for a lot of information that I felt like I wasn't able to get when I was playing. That's what allowed me down the path of, just trying to help prepare athletes for the transition that I was actually going through, because I understood that there were more athletes out there that were going through what I was going through, or they were going to go through what I went through. So I wanted to better prepare them, starting early at the, junior high to high school level. So starting with the youth, to understand that they are more than just, athletes, that they possess, qualities and skills that they're going to not only be able to use to let them become better athletes and student athletes on the field, court, or ice, but more specifically and more importantly, it's going to help them better transition. Once they have to hang up the cleats or the sneaks, right? It's going to help them better transition into not only the career that they want to get into, but as you start to understand, specifically what you are naturally better at than most, you'll start to understand the specific positions in that industry or in that career. So that way, that transition process is a lot smoother than you and I both know. We've heard stories about people that are, 6, 7 years, 8 removed, and they're still, shuffling jobs. So
yeah,
what I've dedicated my life now to.
So the gentleman that you met in the restaurant there, did he continue sort of mentoring you, or did he sort of get you introduced and then move on, or how?
No. To this day, I mean, actually, I have breakfast with him tomorrow. So this is like a 3-year. I would say like a 3-year relationship, to where once a month, I go by his establishment, or even if it's a phone call, and we just talk about life, right? We talk about just development, personally, spiritually, physically, in business. And so he's just been a great resource that's already been in business, already doing those different type of things to kind of to lean on. So again, we still kind of establish, and we continue the relationship to that.
That's awesome. So shifting a little bit now, I told some people already, I mentioned this earlier, that you and I shared a call earlier today where I took the DISC assessment. I've never taken it before. I'm usually scared of that stuff. I'm worried about what it'll tell me. It may say that I should be a ballerina with, running I don't know, whatever, a camp for astronauts. I don't know. So, but I took it, and it was very easy to take for the most part. I mean, there's some challenging, I had to think about things a little bit, but then you and I had a call where we talked about the results, and I have to say, it got me pretty good. I mean, it hit me spot on, but it also, you taught me a lot of things about not just who I am and how I do it and how it applies to my goals, but just as importantly, how I need to have possibly some of the other elements in my life and part of my work. So tell me a little bit about, so what was it that got you involved with this particular assessment, and how did you decide, well, you know what, I'm going to start using this assessment to help not just people like Mark, but people, student athletes and others?
Absolutely. So shortly after, again, kind of establishing that relationship with the mentor, I kind of grew a passion to help, student athletes or athletes in that transition phase to better prepare themselves for the transition, not only to the different levels as they, matriculate into, college and professionally, hopefully, but that big transition after their career is over. So, I ended up getting involved in a program in a community by, Dr. Eric Thomas and Associates, to which they actually, help hone, my speaking skills. And also, since my keynote speech is about identity and understanding who you are, and that story that I touched on with Antonio Brown, stemming from that. And then at the same time, now understanding, my actual qualities, my strengths, right? And making me more comfortable, again, through the tool that we were talking about, and making me more comfortable with who I was, understanding that there's power in, like we were saying, even though you might not agree with them, the power in being an introvert, but being aware of how, when it's required to be an introvert and when that's helping me, but also being aware of the fact that, sometimes in different environments, being an introvert is going to work against me, right? If I'm not aware of it. So I think, without going too deep into it, it's more of just bringing a sense of awareness to your natural talents and strengths, right? And then at the same time, making you aware of some of those blind spots that you might not see, but that if you have a team, right? If you have a team of someone that might be more extroverted, that is better maybe in supporting you and putting things together. If you have a team with somebody that's maybe more so, it might be introverted and helps on the back end of things, making sure that you're staying structured, right? So it's either creating a team that's going to cover your blind spots in those 4 areas, or you can create a system for yourself just to make sure that you're becoming more aware and staying on top of being able to overcome some of those goals and challenges with the natural talents that you already have, and then inserting those people or those systems with the, the areas that you might be lacking in. If that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. I think that's fabulous. So, as you and I discussed, when the whole concept of you take this assessment, and then there's a consulting sort of call from you that really walks the person that takes the assessment through the results and what it really means and how it shakes out. Which I know other people have taken tons of assessments, but it was really eye opening to me, and I thought that not just seeing the results and hearing them, but you really have a knack for explaining it and helping me understand what I was hearing. And I truly appreciate that. That was very impressive. So now with that, is this something that you can approach some of these student athletes and the retired athletes and say to them, look, first let's take this assessment, because that'll really help you understand what your identity is outside of your sport. Is it something that you feel that assessment is critical, necessary, not necessarily necessary? Or how do you like to try to explain to people, here's how you can figure out your identity after you retire?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think the best way to answer it was use an example from my life.
Okay.
So for instance, for me, what we touched on being an introvert, right? So growing up, especially, in a lot of communities, people that look like me, being introverted is not something that is celebrated, right? So, and if you're not careful, right, you can sometimes start to kind of cater towards maybe a different type of style, being extroverted or maybe being someone that can kind of cater between both, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, understand or not having a good relationship with the fact that I was introverted, and at the same time understanding that, I can't necessarily bring that type of style to each and every single environment. That's what hindered me. I would say, if there were certain things that hindered me, even if it was socially, right, outside of football, or even in football, we touched on it earlier. an example of someone that is, again, introverted, thinks a lot, right? Overthinks, a perfectionist almost. And practice, this was perfect for me, right? Because I could have time to ask questions. I filled up the notebook. I knew every single thing about the person that I was going to go against, the social media, probably who they were dating, right? Just in case I got into those type of interactions. But now when I get into the game and it's a different defense than what we had thought they were going to run, right? It's a different environment, right? Now I found myself trying to be introverted and try to process things slow instead of being, you know what, that's not what's being required in this chaotic setting, right? Control chaos. So I know that I would have benefited even more if I was able to understand, okay, it's good to be an introvert, but when I get into this game environment and things don't go the way that it needs to go, now I need to figure out a way that I need to just be able to cooperate or be able to adapt, right? To adapt, to be able to now and still be able to get that end result. So it might not be perfect, but it'll be whatever it needs to be to, or in order to get that result, right? So, and even relating it to what I do now, I don't necessarily like to go fast paced in what I do, right? But understanding that for at least 8 hours out of the day in what I like to do, I have to be flexible. I have to be able to make adjustments. So understanding that, hey, me being systematic and someone that likes procedure, I make sure that now I control maybe the first 3 hours of my day because I do like structure. I do like routine. But then being aware to the fact that the rest of my day, I'm going to have to be flexible. A meeting might get canceled, right? Something might happen that is out of my control. And I can't sit there and ponder on that and think about, you know, why it happened. I have to be able to now move forward in order to can still accomplish my goals as it is, you know, personally what I'm doing in business. So I think it's more so just about being aware, bringing up that sense of awareness to who you are. And then once you start to understand, you know, who you are and your preference, then you'll start to be able to understand the people on your team better, how they like to be communicated to, right? Their learning styles, certain positions that are going to help show their strengths. And then once you start to do that, now you can, you cut out some of those distractions. You cut out some of those setbacks that come from what? Communication, whether it's in sports, business, relationships. Most of the time it's what? Communicating, right? So when you start to learn how to speak to people, not the way that you like to be spoken to, but the way that they like to be spoken to, speaking to their language, that's what I believe helps, that's what I believe will help athletes, you know, that are making that transition, not only discover who they are better, to be able to put them in the proper industries, but more specifically in the proper positions, but even taking it to another level and becoming more aware of themselves, the people around them, so they can create, they can create better harmony when it comes to communication, which is probably whatever organization or relationship, that's probably one of the main problems in that.
That's great. So, you know, as we talked about earlier, the whole concept of behavior styles and so forth and how they mesh and whatnot. But so the assessment helps understand the preferred behavior style and sort of, you know, I think it helps identify not just sort of what specific jobs, but even what industries or what types of things you should be going for as a career and as a job and so forth. But I know that you mentioned, and we talked about the concept of, you know, being aware of not just of your talents, but of your limitations and your blind spots, as we talked about earlier. Talk to me a little bit more about that.
Perfect. So we all have talents, right? And this is one of the analogies I like to use, right? Like everybody, you know, I don't know. I mean, I was a Batman guy growing up, right? So Batman was my superhero, right? His superpower, his super talent was to save everyone, right? But even Batman or Superman, they all had a dark side, right? They all had maybe something that was like a kryptonite to them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when you are operating in your talent, right? You're operating in whether it's systems, you're operating whether it's the pace or the structure, whether it's being a people person or making a lot of decisions. Sometimes you're so good at your talent that you're not aware of the fact that your talent could also be something that works against you, right? Again, like I said, me bringing my very slow process, analytical driven self from practice to the game wasn't going to work, right? So sometimes, and that presents a limitation.
Right.
And again, we all have limitations, but it's, again, being aware of it. And it's either, one thing I like to use is to help you cover those blind spots is either I can put a system in place, right? Whether, for instance, what we were talking earlier, if someone that takes a lot of time in making decisions, I give myself a timetable. If it's a big decision, I'll take a couple of days. If it's a decision that needs to be made by the next day, I give myself a half a day. And if it's just like a small decision, I might give myself, a couple of minutes, right? But now I already cut out, you know, the guessing. I cut out, you know, the wasting time, because I'm giving myself a system to make sure that I make a decision, whether it's right or wrong. Because me being a perfectionist, systematic, I'll know that once I make the decision, whether it's right, wrong, I can be able to clean it up along the way because I know how I'm wired, right? But at least that gets the ball rolling. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Now, when you're, so let's say I've taken the assessment and we've spoken for a while and so forth, and I say to you, you know, all right, we're putting all this into a blender or into whatever it is, and or maybe it's in one of those lottery wheels where something pops out or whatever it is. What I mean, how can we decide? Well, tell you what, you've played football for X amount of years or your whole life. You've pretty much born with a football in your hand or basketball, baseball, whatever.
Yep.
And now you're either out of school, you're about to graduate, or you've played for a couple of years.
Mhm.
Here's how do we decide? Well, if I say I have no idea what to do next, I think I'm just going to go be an assistant football coach at the local high school. What else do I know? How do you try to talk some confidence into them?
Yeah. Well, for honestly, it starts with understanding like where your talents and your strengths are, right? So having an assessment, like we said, in front of us to understand that, whatever career you want to decide in, because one thing about the tool is it's not a tool to tell you, okay, you should be in this industry or you should be on this industry. But what it does is it allows you to still have that, still possess the power to pick what industry you want to be in, what field you
Mm.
want to study, or what field you want to pursue. But then it allows you to say, okay, if you're someone that likes to make a lot of decisions, you might want to go for a manager position, right? If you're someone that likes to you're very people oriented, right? You might want to do something that's involved with hospitality, right? If you're someone that likes to just really support certain things, or you're really great with the pace, you might want to be someone that, is great within the community service, or being a teacher, right? Supporting role. Or if there's somebody that is, me naturally, right? Not my dad, I'm not go into that too far, but me naturally, someone that likes to be behind the scenes, right? Or someone that might not necessarily want to take the credit, but wants to put the systems in place to make sure that all the nuts and bolts are screwed in tight. Then you might want to get into a career that's more so behind the scenes, right? That you're not seeing, maybe quality control, maybe somebody behind the camera. So it's making you understand that, this isn't going to tell you what you should be a lawyer, you should be a doctor, you should be this, but it's saying that in that specific field, in that industry, these are probably the positions that would probably allow you to operate more so in your natural stuff, instead of, like you and I both know, even people in general, we take jobs, we take the positions, and we're trying to make that position work, even though it's not allowing us to express our natural self and what we do that better than others, what we do naturally better than others.
That
Yeah, I
was
mean,
great. It's perfect sense, and it's interesting because as I hear you do all this, I feel like I'm hearing me a few years ago, and this is great. You've really got it all down, and I can see how, if I'm a student athlete and I have no idea, look, I'm a senior, I'm about to graduate, or even with all this virus stuff where so
yeah,
many people had their senior years disappear, right?
absolutely.
Um, you know, it's got to be reassuring to them, because again, I don't think they're getting a lot of this from their career centers, or if the career centers may have some of these resources available, but there's thousands of graduating seniors. They're overwhelmed. So I think
Absolutely.
it's got to be reassuring, Justin. So just to tie up a couple of things here, we've covered a lot of ground. We've talked about really how to figure out, sort of what you can be doing next after you leave your sport, the transition, using whether it's assessments and especially the DISC one to just determine that, and really to understand what your identity is outside of being an athlete, because that's so important, and really understanding what your behavior style is, and where you sort of fall in that spectrum. Spectrum is the wrong word, you know what I mean, the
I got you.
thing. And then also really understanding how you can take your talents, but also looking at your limitations and your blind spots. So all of that has really been fantastic. So drum roll, please. How can people reach out to you directly and either, take the assessment and then get your consultation of that assessment and embark on your program?
Absolutely. So one of the easiest ways to do it is to go through my website, justinbrownvs.com. And on that website, you'll be able to see, the history, more about me, learn more about what I'm doing. And then you have the different services that have that offer the initial consultation, 30-minute consultation with the assessment, and the different coaching programs that stem off of it.
That's great. And we've already talked about this. I'm absolutely going to be highlighting and featuring your information and your program, et cetera, on the website. I think I'm super excited to collaborate with you. You're a fantastic young man. And I hate saying that only because when people say you're a young man, that means I'm an old man. And I don't like that. So we're both young men, right?
Oh, that's it. That's it.
But anyway, all right. So listen, a totally separate, quick football question, but I have to ask it. A couple quick ones. Number one, describe to me what it was like to catch your first ball as a Steeler.
Oh man.
Do you remember it even? I mean, I know you
Yeah,
remember it, but
I'm trying to think. It would probably been the first rookie mini camp, and it was probably thrown to me by Landry Jones. So I think just that connection, being that was my college quarterback, and then understanding that we're playing in the NFL, I think that was kind of a unique experience. So that was cool. Yeah.
but then as a Steeler in front of, during
the game and catching my first pass in front of Ben, in front of all those fans, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I can remember. I can remember like every catch or every play, because you remember those, right? So, yeah, it was honestly just even being able to run out, in hindsight, and running out and being like, wow, this is what I dreamed, as a 5-year-old kid, and here I am playing with black and yellow for one of the most historic franchises in history. So
that's amazing. Now, I know the NFL doesn't let everybody keep every ball, but do you have a ball from the first catch or the first game, or how's that?
So I do have a NFL ball. I have 2 NFL balls, but it wasn't like my first catch ball. It was just one of the balls that I just took. You know what I mean? It had a lot around. It was always in my locker, so I was like, oh, it's coming with me.
It's your first catch.
Yeah, it's my first catch. Yeah. They don't know that.
That's great. And one last other just quick question. I'm assuming there were some times where you were asked to block or be blocked or whatever it is. Was there ever a time that you just got leveled?
Oh man, plenty times in practice, practice and in the game. I know one time in practice, actually, in training camp at Latrobe, I had to go crack Shamarco Thomas, he was the actual teammate. So he was he was a safety out of Syracuse, great, very physical player, and I had to go crack him, right? So I crack him. And it was pretty much a stalemate, but my helmet came so far down that it broke my nose. So and I didn't even realize that my nose was broken until after practice, and I'm talking to my girlfriend at the time, and she's like, your nose a little crooked. So I look at my visor of my helmet, and I'm just like, oh, I think I might have broke my nose. So now I go and I had to get surgery that night.
Wow.
I missed one practice, and then I was back plugged in again playing. I'll never forget. Troy was like, You're back out here playing after literally going through a night of surgery, and I couldn't even sleep the whole night because I got gauze stuck up my nose. And the next day I'm back out practicing, and Troy was just like, "Man, you're crazy. I like it." And I'm just like, I'm just trying to stay around.
I would have been more worried if you said your girlfriend said, "Did you get a haircut or something?"
Right,
what's
right.
up? Why is your nose over? Did you get a haircut? Anyway,
Right.
well, listen, thanks so much for being on board, Justin. This was great, and you're just the reason why I love having these webinars, and it's going to be we're going to be posting the replay. You'll be seeing that soon. It'll be on YouTube and all over the place, and it'll all be part of the Win Again Academy. So thanks again for being part of this. You're a great guy, and I'm excited to see how you're going to really grow and take this going forward. So thanks again for being on board, Justin.
No problem, Mark. Thanks again for having me. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. We'll talk soon.
All right. Take it easy.
You too.